Disturbing new reporting from CBS News highlights statements from immigrants detained after crossing illegally into the United States. In the story, published today on CBSNews.com, those who spoke out described being kept in, quote, ice boxes and dog pounds after they were initially detained. They said the food they were given was, quote, not fit for consumption, and were told not to look at their kids being kept in separate cages. So CBS News investigative journalist Graham Cates joins us now with more on his reporting. I got to tell you, Graham, when I read your piece, the first thing I thought was the descriptions that I'm hearing, it doesn't remind me in any way of the video that we were permitted to shoot in some of these facilities. They described not being able to lie down, inedible food, meaning like frozen solid, and so they couldn't eat it. Give us a sense of some of the things that some of these detainees have been saying.
Sure. So there was over 200 detainees who were interviewed by a team of lawyers that went across 3 different states. And it was really remarkable how consistent their stories were. They described, as you said, ice boxes, which they said they were brought into when they first crossed the border. Mm-hmm. They said they were held overnight or sometimes longer. And what they described as really frigid rooms where it was hard to sleep because they were shivering the whole time. Sometimes they arrived wet or muddy and they weren't allowed to change their clothes. Mm-hmm. And they were just given these sandwiches that they said were kind of ice cold and sometimes smelling like rotten. A lot of them, one person said, I would rather go hungry than eat the food that they gave me because I was afraid of getting sick. And then they were brought to what they described as dog pounds, and that's the kind of caged facilities that we saw in those videos. But it was different than what we saw, which is that people were crowded into the cages and told that they weren't allowed to go to sleep. Parents and children were put into different cages and were yelled at for looking at each other, and it's not really explained why that is. And children described being kicked if they tried to go to sleep. So we should point out that the video that we're showing right now is video provided to us and to the members of the media by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. You focus on 3 immigrants who shared their stories in the testimony, who fled violence in their home countries, and then said that they faced harsh conditions in U.S. detention centers. Describe for our viewers the situation some of these individuals are facing back home and the reasons they feel they need to leave and come to the United States, albeit illegally, but the conditions that they're facing back home are really harsh. They described coming here so we had a 21-year-old woman who came here with her son. She said she witnessed a decapitation in El Salvador, and then soon the murderers were asking about her because she witnessed it, so she fled. Another woman, Anna, who is 26, said she came with her 6-year-old daughter because she was threatened for being gay. She said her transgender friend had already been beaten to death by the same people. And Kaylin, a 16-year-old girl, came with her mom. She said that her mom's life had been threatened and she had already been held up at gunpoint 3 times. People would have heard of the Flores versus Reno case ever since we started talking about what's happening at the border. And it sort of lays out the conditions under which a migrant child can be placed once picked up at the border. Give me a sense of what the argument is from the attorneys who represent these migrants. How do they say, the government is violating these guidelines? Flores lays out basically what you'd expect for any child care for an American, essentially, if it's for a little kid, like a daycare setup, where they're given social services and the nutrition and the health care is supposed to be good. And for older kids, recreational activities and those kinds of things. And they're saying these conditions in no way meets what Flores mandates the government to do. So the Juvenile Coordinator for Customs and Border Protection said this: the agency is taking extensive efforts to make sure all minors in its custody are treated with dignity and respect. What do we know about what steps the agency is taking to ensure that happens? So the Juvenile Coordinator is really important to CBP because he's the one tasked with making sure that they keep up with Flores. He said in an earlier filing that he had visited lots of sites and conducted over 36 interviews with migrants. He basically said the temperature is good there, they're getting good, nutritious food, there aren't that many complaints, and that there was limited reports of abuse. So it's 2 completely different stories being told by the government and by the lawyers for the migrants. Well, Graham, I tell you, it's a really good read. I think the paragraphs where you talk about the stories of the migrants and what they're escaping from, right. I think it's really, really chilling. You get the sense that there are very few options for these people. It's not because they just want a better life or a better job. I mean, their lives are on the line. They're facing possible death where they're coming from. And then to face these conditions once they get here, it's disappointing. It was really a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your reporting, Graham. We appreciate it.
Thank you.